The man who told her no one would ever want her was about to discover just how wrong he could be. Eva Mancini thought she was worthless, a broken single mother hiding behind baggy clothes in shame, convinced her abusive ex-husband spoke the truth when he shattered her self-worth in that parking lot. But when she accidentally caught the attention of the most dangerous man in the city, everything changed. What started as a blind date disaster became a collision with destiny. Because Luca Vitale didn't just see her worth, he was willing to kill for it. Her ex-husband had no idea he'd just declared war on a man who collected debts in blood and made problems disappear with a single phone call. The woman he called damaged goods was about to become untouchable, and the reckoning would be swift and merciless. Subscribe and tell me where you're watching from, because this story of revenge, redemption, and forbidden love is just getting started. The streetlight flickered above Eva Mancini as she pushed through the diner's back door, her shoulders aching from another 12-hour shift. The October air bit through her thin jacket. She pulled it tighter around herself and hurried toward the parking lot where her beat-up Honda waited. "Eva." The voice made her freeze. Her ex-husband stepped out from behind a parked truck, his face twisted with the same mean look that had haunted her dreams for months. "Danny." She kept walking, keys ready in her hand. "What do you want?" "You think you're better than me now?" He followed her, his voice getting louder. Living in that dump apartment, working at this greasy spoon? Eva's heart pounded. She reached her car and fumbled with the lock. "I don't want any trouble." Danny grabbed her wrist. His grip was too tight, just like before. "Look at me when I'm talking to you." "Let go." She tried to pull away, but he held on. "You're pathetic," he hissed. "No man will ever want you. You hear me? Look at yourself. You're used up. Damaged goods." The words hit her like a slap. Eva's throat closed up. She wanted to fight back, to tell him he was wrong, but the words wouldn't come. A small voice broke through the darkness. "Mama?" Sammy stood by the diner's back door, clutching his worn, stuffed bear. Her 7-year-old son's dark eyes were wide with fear. He hadn't spoken much since the divorce, and seeing Danny always made him go completely quiet. Danny let go of her wrist and stepped back. "Fix your life, Eva, before you mess up that kid too." He walked away, disappearing into the shadows between buildings. Eva's hand shook as she unlocked the car. Sammy climbed into the back seat without a word, hugging his bear tight. The drive home was quiet. Eva kept checking the rearview mirror, making sure Danny wasn't following them. Their apartment building looked tired and gray in the streetlight. Paint peeled from the walls, and one of the security lights was burned out. "You okay, baby?" Eva asked as they climbed the stairs to their third-floor apartment. Sammy nodded but didn't speak. He never spoke much anymore. The doctor said it was normal after everything that had happened. Some kids went quiet when their world got turned upside down. Inside their small apartment, Eva made Sammy a peanut butter sandwich and poured him a glass of milk. He ate slowly, his eyes never leaving her face. "Daddy was mean again," she said softly, "but he's gone now. We're safe here." Sammy finished his sandwich and went to brush his teeth. Eva stood at the bathroom mirror looking at her reflection. Her brown hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail. Dark circles shadowed her eyes. Her uniform was wrinkled and smelled like French fries. Danny's words echoed in her head. "No man will ever want you." Maybe he was right. Maybe she was too broken, too tired, too much trouble. She was 29 years old with a son who barely spoke and an ex-husband who wouldn't leave them alone. What man would want that mess? She tucked Sammy into his twin bed and kissed his forehead. "I love you, sweet boy," he whispered back, so quiet she almost missed it. "Love you too, Mama." Eva's heart broke a little more. Even her baby was afraid to use his voice. The next morning, her best friend Maria called while Eva was getting ready for work. "I have someone I want you to meet," Maria said without even saying hello. "No." Eva balanced the phone between her shoulder and ear while she braided her hair. "Absolutely not." "Come on, Eva. When's the last time you went on a date?" "There's a reason for that." Eva checked on Sammy, who was eating cereal at their tiny kitchen table. "I'm not interested." "His name is, well, I can't tell you his name yet, but he's nice. Successful. He owns some businesses in the city." Eva rolled her eyes. "Maria, I work double shifts just to pay rent. I have a 7-year-old son who needs me. I don't have time for dating." "You have time to be miserable?" The words stung because they were true. Eva was miserable. She went to work, came home, took care of Sammy, and fell into bed exhausted. She couldn't remember the last time she'd laughed or felt genuinely happy. "One date," Maria pressed. "Just coffee. If you hate it, you never have to see him again." Eva looked at herself in the bathroom mirror again. She saw a tired woman who'd given up on herself. Maybe that was the problem. Maybe Danny was right because she'd stopped believing she deserved anything better. "Fine," she heard herself say. "One coffee. Tonight, 7 o'clock, that new Italian place on 5th Street. Maria, I can't tonight. I have to work, and Sammy—" "I already talked to Mrs. Patterson. She'll watch Sammy. And I called your manager. You're off at 5 today." Eva's mouth fell open. "You did what?" "Sometimes you need friends who push you out of your comfort zone." After Maria hung up, Eva stared at the phone. Part of her was angry, but another part felt something she hadn't felt in months: nervous excitement. That afternoon, she stood in front of her tiny closet looking at her handful of clothes. Everything was practical: work uniforms, old jeans, oversized sweaters that hid her body. She didn't own anything that made her feel pretty or confident. She pulled out a baggy gray sweater and loose black pants. If she was going to do this, she might as well be comfortable. And if the guy didn't like how she looked, well, that would save them both some time. "Where are you going, Mama?" Sammy asked from her bedroom doorway. "Just out for a little while. Mrs. Patterson is going to stay with you." Sammy's face tightened with worry. "Is Daddy coming back?" "No, baby. Daddy doesn't know where I'm going, and Mrs. Patterson won't let anyone in except me. You'll be safe." At 6:30, she walked the 4 blocks to the restaurant. The Italian place was fancier than anywhere she usually went. Through the big windows, she could see people in nice clothes sitting at tables with white tablecloths. Eva almost turned around. She didn't belong in a place like this. But Maria's words echoed in her head. Sometimes you need friends who push you out of your comfort zone. She took a deep breath and walked toward the entrance. As she reached for the door handle, she heard Danny's voice behind her. "Well, well, look what we have here." Her blood turned to ice. She turned around slowly. Danny stood in the parking lot, his arms crossed over his chest. "Going somewhere fancy, Eva? You clean up nice. For a waitress." "Leave me alone, Danny." She tried to keep her voice steady. "Who's the guy? Some loser who doesn't know what damaged goods look like?" Other people were walking past them, going in and out of the restaurant. Eva felt their eyes on her. She wanted to disappear. "You're embarrassing yourself," Danny continued, stepping closer. "You think putting on a sweater and some lipstick makes you worth something? You think some man is going to want to play daddy to my kid? Stop it." Eva's voice cracked. "That boy needs his real father, not some stranger you picked up. You're being selfish, like always." Eva tried to walk past him toward the restaurant door, but Danny moved to block her path. "I'm talking to you, and I'm done listening." The voice came from behind Danny. Deep, calm, with just a hint of an accent Eva couldn't place. Danny spun around. A man stood a few feet away. He was tall and broad-shouldered, wearing a dark suit that looked expensive. His black hair was perfectly styled, and his dark eyes were fixed on Danny with an intensity that made Eva shiver. But it wasn't just how he looked. It was how he carried himself. Like he was used to being in control, like he never had to raise his voice to get what he wanted. "This is a private conversation," Danny said, but his voice had lost some of its edge. The stranger's eyes flicked to Eva, then back to Danny. "No, this is harassment, and it's over." Danny puffed out his chest, trying to look bigger. "Who do you think you are?" The man smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Someone you don't want to know better. Walk away." "You can't tell me." "Walk away." The stranger's voice dropped lower. "Now." Something in his tone made Danny take a step back. Eva could see the moment Danny realized he was outmatched. Her ex-husband looked at her one more time, his face full of anger and frustration. "This isn't over," he muttered. Then he turned and walked quickly toward the street, practically jogging by the time he reached the sidewalk. Eva stood frozen, her heart pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. The stranger turned to look at her, and she got her first good look at his face. He had strong features and olive skin. There were lines around his eyes that suggested he smiled sometimes, but right now his expression was serious, concerned. "Are you hurt?" he asked. Eva shook her head, not trusting her voice. "Your wrist." She looked down. Red marks showed where Danny had grabbed her. She pulled her sleeve down to cover them. "I'm fine." The man studied her for a moment. "Would you like me to call the police?" "No, it's complicated." He nodded, like he understood complicated. "Are you meeting someone here?" Eva felt heat rise in her cheeks. "I was supposed to, a blind date, but I think—" She looked toward the restaurant, then back at the parking lot where Danny had disappeared. "I think I should just go home." "Your date is inside?" "I don't know. I've never met him." The stranger was quiet for a moment. "What's his name?" Eva realized she didn't know. "My friend set it up. She said she couldn't tell me his name yet." Something shifted in the man's expression. "Your friend's name?" "Maria Santos." He nodded slowly. "I see." Eva felt stupid standing there. Her blind date was probably inside wondering where she was. Or maybe he'd taken one look at her through the window and decided to leave. Either way, this night was a disaster. "I should go," she said. "Let me buy you coffee." The offer surprised her. "What?" "You came here to meet someone. That someone disappointed you. Let me buy you coffee. No expectations, no pressure. Just so your night wasn't completely wasted." Eva looked at this stranger who'd rescued her from Danny. He was handsome in a way that made her stomach flutter. But there was something else about him. Something that made her feel safe and nervous at the same time. "I don't even know your name." "Luca," he said. "Luca Vitale." "Eva Mancini." He smiled, and for the first time it reached his eyes. "Nice to meet you, Eva." She looked toward the restaurant again. Through the window she could see the hostess seating a couple at a corner table. Everyone looked so put together, so confident. "I don't really fit in there," she said quietly. "Neither do I," Luca said. "Most of the time." There was something in his voice that made her look at him more closely, like he understood what it felt like to be on the outside looking in. "Just coffee," he said again. 30 minutes, then I'll make sure you get home safely." Eva thought about Sammy waiting at home with Mrs. Patterson. She thought about going back to their small apartment and spending another evening watching cartoons and pretending everything was okay. She thought about Danny's words, "No man will ever want you." Maybe that was true, But this man was offering to buy her coffee. That was something, wasn't it? "Okay," she said. "Just coffee." Luca's smile got a little warmer. "Good." He opened the restaurant door for her, and Eva stepped inside. The hostess greeted Luca by name and led them to a quiet table near the back. As they walked through the dining room, Eva noticed other patrons glancing at Luca with a mixture of respect and something else. Something that looked almost like fear. But when he pulled out her chair, his touch was gentle. When he asked what she wanted to drink, his voice was kind. Eva ordered decaf coffee. Luca ordered the same. "So," he said when the waitress left, "tell me about Eva Mancini." She almost laughed. "There's not much to tell. I work at Murphy's Diner. I have a 7-year-old son. I live in a small apartment and drive an old car." "That's what you do, not who you are." The question caught her off guard. When was the last time someone had asked her who she was instead of what she did? "I don't know," she said honestly. "I used to know, but it's been a while since anyone asked." Luca leaned back in his chair, studying her. "How long since your divorce?" 8 months. "And your son's father?" Ava's chest tightened. "He shows up sometimes, usually when he's been drinking or when he needs money. Tonight was typical." "He hurt you." It wasn't a question. Luca had seen the marks on her wrist. "Not tonight, not physically. He just says things." "What kind of things?" Eva looked down at her coffee cup. She couldn't repeat Danny's words to this stranger. They were too cruel, too personal. "Things that make me remember why I divorced him," she said instead. Luca was quiet for a moment. When he spoke again, his voice was softer. "You have a job. You're raising your son alone. You showed up tonight even though you were scared. That takes strength." Eva felt tears prick at her eyes. When was the last time someone had called her strong? "I don't feel strong." The strongest people usually don't. They sat in comfortable silence for a few minutes, drinking their coffee. Eva found herself relaxing for the first time in weeks. There was something about Luca that made her feel calm, safe. "What about you?" she asked. "What do you do?" "I run several businesses, import, export, some restaurants." "Like this one?" Luca nodded. "Like this one." That explained why the staff knew him, why other customers looked at him the way they did. "Are you married?" The question slipped out before Eva could stop herself. She felt her cheeks burn. "Sorry, that's none of my business." "I was married," Luca said, quietly. "My wife died 3 years ago. I'm so sorry. Thank you." There was pain in his voice that Eva recognized. The same pain she heard in her own voice when people asked about her marriage. "It's hard," she said, starting over. "Yes, it is." They finished their coffee, and Luca walked her outside. The parking lot was empty now. No sign of Danny. "Where did you park?" Luca asked. Eva pointed to her Honda, which looked even more beat up next to the expensive cars in the restaurant lot. "I'll follow you home," Luca said. "Make sure you get there safely." "You don't have to do that." "I want to." Eva looked at this man who'd rescued her from Danny and bought her coffee and listened to her talk about her life. She couldn't figure him out. He was clearly successful, probably wealthy. He could have his pick of women. So why was he being kind to a divorced waitress with a complicated life? "Luca?" "Yes?" "Why did you help me tonight?" He was quiet for a long moment. "Because everyone deserves to be treated with respect, and because—" He paused. "Because I know what it's like to feel like you're fighting the world alone." Eva felt something shift inside her chest. A tiny crack in the wall she'd built around her heart. "Thank you," she whispered. Luca waited until she was safely in her car before walking to his own vehicle. a black BMW that probably cost more than Eva made in 2 years. As she drove home, she could see his headlights in her rearview mirror. True to his word, he followed her all the way to her apartment building. When she parked, he waited until she was inside before driving away. Eva climbed the stairs to her apartment, her mind spinning. Mrs. Patterson was dozing on the couch, and Sammy was fast asleep in his bed. "How was your date, dear?" Mrs. Patterson asked quietly as Eva paid her for babysitting. "It wasn't what I expected," Eva said. That was the truth. She'd expected awkward conversation with a stranger her friend had picked out. She'd expected to feel uncomfortable and out of place. Instead, she'd met a man who'd made her feel protected and heard. A man who'd seen her at her worst, facing down her abusive ex-husband in a parking lot, and had still wanted to buy her coffee. After Mrs. Patterson left, Eva stood in front of her bathroom mirror again. But this time, she didn't see the tired, defeated woman Danny's words had put there. She saw a mother who worked hard to provide for her son, a woman who'd been brave enough to leave a bad marriage and build a new life, a woman who'd said yes to coffee with a stranger and had discovered that maybe, just maybe, she was worth more than she'd been telling herself. As she got ready for bed, Eva found herself thinking about Luca Vitale, about the way he'd handled Danny without raising his voice, about how he'd listened to her talk about her life without judgment, about the sadness in his eyes when he'd mentioned his late wife. She thought about the way other people in the restaurant had looked at him, with respect, but also with something that might have been fear. What kind of businesses did he really run? What kind of man could make Danny back down with just a look and a few quiet words? Eva pushed the questions away. Whatever Luca's story was, he'd been kind to her tonight. He'd made her feel safe and respected. That was enough. But as she drifted off to sleep, she couldn't stop thinking about his dark eyes and the way he'd said her name. Like it mattered. Like she mattered. For the first time in months, Eva Mancini fell asleep with a small smile on her face. The next morning, Eva woke up feeling different. Lighter somehow. She made Sammy breakfast and got him ready for school, humming softly while she braided his dark hair. "You sound happy, Mama," Sammy said quietly. Eva paused, realizing he was right. "I guess I am, baby." She walked Sammy to the bus stop like always, but this time she noticed things she'd missed before. The way the morning sun made the old brick buildings look warm instead of tired. How Mrs. Chen from the corner store waved at them with a genuine smile. At work, Maria cornered her the moment she walked into Murphy's diner. "So, how was it? Tell me everything." Eva tied her apron around her waist, trying to figure out how to explain the night before. "It wasn't what you told me it would be." "What do you mean?" Maria's eyes narrowed. "He didn't show up? I'm going to kill him." "No, it's not that. It's complicated." The lunch rush hit before Eva could explain further. She spent the next few hours serving coffee and taking orders, but her mind kept drifting back to Luca. The way he'd stood so calmly while Danny got aggressive. How his voice had been gentle when he asked if she was hurt. Around 2:00, the bell above the diner door chimed. Eva looked up from wiping down table 6 and froze. 2 men in expensive suits had walked in. They weren't the usual Murphy's customers. Their clothes were too nice, their shoes too shiny. They sat in a booth near the window and ordered coffee, but Eva could feel their eyes following her around the dining room. Every instinct told her something was wrong. She poured their coffee with shaking hands. "Anything else?" The taller man smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Just enjoying the service." Eva hurried back to the kitchen, her heart pounding. She pulled out her phone, thinking about calling the police. But what would she say? 2 well-dressed men were drinking coffee and making her nervous? 20 minutes later, another man walked into the diner. Eva recognized him immediately, though she couldn't remember where from. He was shorter and stockier than the men in the booth, with gray at his temples and kind eyes. He sat at the counter and ordered coffee and pie. When Eva brought his order, he spoke quietly. "Those men at the window booth, they're making you uncomfortable." It wasn't a question. Eva nodded, glancing nervously toward the two strangers. "Don't worry," the man said calmly. "They're leaving." Eva looked over at the booth. The two men were indeed standing up, throwing money on the table. They walked out without looking back. "How did you—" "My name is Gianni," the man said. "I work for a friend of yours. Luca Vitale asked me to make sure you're safe at work." Eva's mouth fell open. "He what?" "He was concerned about the man who bothered you last night, wanted to make sure he didn't cause more trouble." "But I didn't ask him to." "No," Johnny agreed. "You didn't. But sometimes good people need protection whether they ask for it or not." Eva stared at this stranger, who claimed to work for Luca. "Are you like a bodyguard or something?" Johnny's smile was gentle. "Something like that." After Johnny left, Eva couldn't concentrate on her work. Her mind was spinning with questions. Why was Luca having her watched? What kind of businesses did he really run that he had people like Johnny working for him? And why did the thought of his protection make her feel safe instead of scared? When her shift ended, Eva walked to the elementary school to pick up Sammy. Usually he came running when he saw her, but today he walked slowly, his head down. "What's wrong, sweet boy?" Sammy shrugged. "Tommy said his dad is taking him fishing this weekend." Eva's heart ached. Sammy never complained about not having Danny around, but she knew he noticed when other kids talked about their fathers. They were walking toward the bus stop when Sammy suddenly stopped. He tugged on Eva's sleeve and pointed across the street. A black BMW was parked at the curb. Luca Vitale stood beside it, hands in his pockets, watching them. Eva's pulse quickened. "Stay close to me, baby." They crossed the street. Luca's expression was serious but not threatening. "Miss Mancini." "Mr. Vitale." Eva's voice was cooler than she felt. "I heard you sent someone to watch me today." "I was concerned about your safety." "I didn't ask for your help." "No," Luca agreed. "You didn't." Sammy was staring up at Luca with wide, curious eyes. Most adults made him nervous, but he didn't seem afraid. "This is my son, Sammy," Eva said, putting a protective hand on the boy's shoulder. Luca crouched down to Sammy's eye level. "Hello, Sammy. I'm Luca." Sammy didn't speak, but he nodded shyly. "He doesn't talk much to strangers," Eva explained. "That's smart," Luca said to Sammy. "Your mama taught you well." He stood and looked at Eva. "I'd like to speak with you, privately." Eva glanced around the busy street. "About what?" "About the man who bothered you last night, and about keeping you and your son safe." "We're fine. We don't need—" "Eva." Luca's voice was gentle but serious. Men like that don't usually give up after one confrontation, especially when they've been drinking. A chill ran down Eva's spine. "How do you know he'd been drinking?" "I could smell it on him, and I've seen enough angry men to recognize the type." Eva wanted to argue, but deep down she knew he was right. Danny wasn't the type to back down easily, and he'd seemed different last night. More desperate somehow. "What are you suggesting?" "Let me drive you home. We can talk on the way." Eva looked at Sammy, who was still watching Luca with interest instead of fear. Her son's instincts were usually good about people. "Okay," she said finally, "but just to talk." Luca's car was even nicer inside than it looked from the outside. Leather seats, spotless interior, and some kind of classical music playing softly. Sammy settled into the back seat, running his small hands over the smooth upholstery. "Fancy," Eva murmured. "It's practical," Luca said, starting the engine. safe, reliable. As they drove toward Eva's apartment, Luca explained his concerns about Danny. Men who harass their ex-wives in public are usually escalating. They start with words, then progress to more serious threats. Danny's not violent, Eva said, but her voice lacked conviction. He grabbed your wrist. That's not... Eva stopped. It was exactly what Danny used to do when they were married. Grab her wrist or her arm when he wanted to make a point. Never hard enough to leave lasting marks, but tight enough to show control. Has he been to your apartment? No, I don't think so. You don't think so? Eva was quiet for a moment. Sometimes I come home and feel like someone's been there, but nothing's ever missing. So I figured I was being paranoid. Luca's hands tightened on the steering wheel. What kind of things? Little stuff. My mail scattered on the floor like it fell through the slot wrong. Books on my nightstand in a different order. Sammy's toys moved around. When did this start? About a month ago. They pulled up in front of Eva's building. Luca parked and turned to face her. Eva, I think your ex-husband has been inside your apartment. The words hit her like ice water. No, he doesn't have a key. I changed the locks. There are other ways to get inside. Eva looked back at Sammy, who was listening quietly. She didn't want to scare him, but she was starting to feel scared herself. What do you think I should do? Let me help you. How? Security cameras, better locks, someone to watch the building at night. Eva shook her head. I can't afford that kind of thing. I can. Why would you do that for us? You barely know me. Luca was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was softer. Because I know what it's like to lose someone you should have protected. There was pain in his words that made Eva's chest tighten. She thought about what he'd told her the night before. His wife who had died. Luca, just think about it, he said. That's all I ask. Eva got out of the car and helped Sammy with his backpack. As they walked toward the building entrance, she heard Luca's window roll down. Eva. She turned back. Some men don't stop until they're made to stop. That evening, after Sammy was asleep, Eva stood at her living room window looking down at the street. Luca's words kept echoing in her head. Some men don't stop until they're made to stop. She thought about Danny's face the night before, the anger in his voice when he'd said those cruel things about her, how he'd only backed down when Luca appeared. What if Luca was right? What if Danny wasn't just going to leave them alone? Eva checked the locks on her front door twice before going to bed. She left the hallway light on and kept her phone on the nightstand where she could reach it quickly. Around midnight, she heard a sound that made her heart stop, the slow creak of footsteps on the stairs outside her apartment. Eva held her breath, listening. The footsteps stopped right outside her door. The doorknob turned slowly, back and forth, like someone was testing to see if it was locked. Eva grabbed her phone, her hands shaking so hard she could barely dial. Should she call the police? What if it was just a drunk neighbor who was lost? The footsteps moved away from her door and continued up the stairs to the 4th floor. Eva waited, counting her heartbeats, until she heard a door open and close somewhere above her. But she didn't sleep the rest of the night. The next morning, Eva found a folded piece of paper that had been slipped under her door. Her name was written on the outside in handwriting she recognized. Inside, Danny had written, "You can't hide forever. We need to talk about Sammy. He belongs with his real family." Eva's hands trembled as she read the note again. Danny had been here, outside her door, while she and Sammy were sleeping. She called in sick to work and spent the day trying to figure out what to do. She couldn't afford to move. She couldn't afford security cameras or better locks. But she couldn't keep living like this either, constantly looking over her shoulder, afraid to sleep in her own home. That afternoon, she called the number Luca had given her. "It's Eva," she said when he answered. "I need to talk to you." "What happened?" She told him about the footsteps, about the note. When she finished, there was silence on the other end of the line. "Pack a bag for you and Sammy," Luca said finally. "Enough for a few days." "What?" "No, I can't just leave. Eva, listen to me. This man is escalating. The note is a threat, and him being at your apartment in the middle of the night crosses a line." "Where would we go?" "Somewhere safe. I have a place." Eva closed her eyes. She thought about Sammy sleeping peacefully in his bed, not knowing that his father had been outside their door a few hours earlier. "I'll pick you up in an hour," Lucas said. "Don't answer the door for anyone except me." After he hung up, Eva stared at the phone. Was she making the right choice? Was she overreacting? Then she looked at Danny's note again. "He belongs with his real family." Danny had never wanted custody of Sammy during the divorce. He'd barely asked to see him since then. So why was he suddenly interested in claiming his son? Eva packed quickly, throwing clothes and toiletries into an old duffel bag. She packed Sammy's favorite books and his stuffed bear. When Sammy got home from school, she tried to explain without scaring him. "We're going to stay somewhere else for a few days, like a little vacation." "Why?" Sammy asked, his dark eyes serious. "Because Mama wants to make sure we're extra safe." "Is it because of Daddy?" Eva's heart broke. Her 7-year-old was too young to understand adult problems, but old enough to sense when something was wrong. "Yes, baby, but everything's going to be okay." When Luca arrived, he carried their bags to the car without question. Eva noticed he kept looking around the street, watching for threats. As they drove away from her apartment building, Eva felt like she was leaving her old life behind. Everything familiar was disappearing in the rearview mirror. "Where are we going?" she asked. "My home," Lucas said. "It's secure. You and Sammy will be safe there." Eva looked back at her son, who was staring out the window with wide eyes. What was she getting them into? Who was Luca Vitale, really? And what did it mean that he had the kind of home that came with security? But as they drove through the city, away from Danny's threats and toward an uncertain future, Eva realized something. For the first time in months, she wasn't looking over her shoulder. She wasn't jumping at every sound. Luca Vitale made her feel safe. And right now, that was worth more than all her questions and doubts combined. They drove for 20 minutes before turning through a set of tall iron gates. The driveway was long and lined with trees. At the end sat a large stone house that looked like something from a movie. "You live here?" Sammy asked, speaking for the first time since they'd left the apartment. "I do," Lucas said, smiling at him in the rearview mirror. Eva stared at the house through the windshield. This wasn't just wealth. This was serious money. The kind that came with questions she wasn't sure she wanted answers to. As they got out of the car, an older woman with graying hair and kind eyes came out to greet them. "Eva, Sammy, this is Mrs. Morelli. She manages the household." Mrs. Morelli smiled warmly at them. "Welcome. I've prepared rooms for you both. Are you hungry? I was just making dinner." Eva felt overwhelmed. This woman was treating them like invited guests instead of refugees seeking shelter. "That's very kind," Eva said, "but we don't want to be any trouble." "Nonsense," Mrs. Morelli said, already heading toward the front door. "It's been too quiet around here. It'll be nice to have voices in the house again." As they followed Mrs. Morelli inside, Eva caught Luca's arm. "Why are you doing this?" she whispered. Luca looked down at her, his dark eyes serious. "Because everyone deserves to be safe in their own home. And because—" He paused, watching Sammy explore the large foyer with wonder. "Because some people are worth protecting." Eva felt that crack in her heart widen a little more. This man who barely knew them was opening his home, offering his protection, asking nothing in return. For the first time since her divorce, Eva Mancini felt like maybe she and Sammy weren't fighting the world alone anymore. Eva woke up in a bed softer than any she'd ever slept in. For a moment, she forgot where she was. Then the events of the previous day came flooding back. Danny's note, the midnight footsteps, Luca's offer of safety. She looked around the guest room where she'd spent the night. Everything was elegant but not showy. Cream-colored walls, dark wood furniture, and windows that looked out over a garden she could barely see in the early morning light. From down the hall, she heard Sammy's quiet laughter. Her heart lifted. When was the last time she'd heard him laugh? Eva found them in the kitchen, Sammy sitting at a large marble island while Luca scrambled eggs at the stove. Mrs. Morelli was packing what looked like a school lunch. "Mama," Sammy called when he saw her, "Luca's making breakfast, and Mrs. Morelli cut my sandwich into triangles like you do." "Good morning," Luca said, not turning around. "Coffee's fresh." Eva poured herself a cup and watched this strange scene. Her son looked more relaxed than he had in months, and Luca moved around the kitchen like he enjoyed cooking, which surprised her. "You didn't have to make breakfast," she said. "I like cooking," Luca replied. "Don't get to do it much anymore." Mrs. Morelli finished packing Sammy's lunch and handed Eva a thermos. "Coffee for work, dear. I wasn't sure how you like it." Reality crashed back down on Eva. "Work? Oh, no. I called in sick yesterday. But I have to go in today or I'll lose my job." "I'll drive you," Luca said, "and pick you up after." "You don't have to." "Eva." His voice was gentle but firm. "Until we know what your ex-husband is planning, you shouldn't be alone." After breakfast, Luca drove Eva to work, while Sammy rode along to be dropped at school. In the back seat, her son chattered more than he had in weeks, asking Luca questions about his car, his house, whether he had any pets. "Do you have kids?" Sammy asked as they pulled up to the elementary school. Luca's hands tightened on the steering wheel for just a moment. "I did. Once." "Where are they now?" "They're in heaven," Luca said quietly, "with my wife." Sammy was quiet for a moment, processing this. "That's sad." "Yes, it is. But now you have us for a while, right?" Eva's throat closed up. She turned to look at Luca, whose expression had gone soft in a way that made her chest ache. "Yes," he said. "Now I have you for a while." At Murphy's diner, Maria pounced on Eva the moment she walked in. "Where have you been? You called in sick yesterday, which you never do. And you look—" Maria studied her friend's face. "Different. Good different." "It's complicated," Eva said, tying on her apron. "Everything's complicated with you lately. Talk." During the lunch rush, Eva told Maria bits and pieces of what had happened. How Danny had shown up at her apartment. The threatening note. Luca's offer of protection. "Wait," Maria said, loading plates onto a tray. "You're staying at this guy's house? Eva, you've known him for 2 days. I know it sounds crazy. It sounds dangerous. What if he's not who he says he is? What if he has bad intentions?" Eva had wondered the same thing, but when she thought about Luca making breakfast for Sammy, or the gentle way he'd spoken about his lost family, her doubts faded. "My son likes him," she said. "Sammy doesn't trust easily, but he laughed at breakfast this morning. Really laughed." Maria's expression softened. "How long since you've seen him laugh like that?" "Months." Around 3 o'clock, 2 police officers walked into the diner. Ava's heart jumped into her throat until she saw their relaxed postures. They ordered coffee and pie, chatted with other customers. Normal cop behavior. But when one of them approached the counter to pay, he spoke quietly to Eva. "Ma'am, we had a report about someone bothering you at work yesterday. 2 men making you uncomfortable?" Eva glanced around the diner. Yes, but they left. Good to hear. We're going to increase patrols in this area for a while. Just want you to feel safe. After the officers left, Eva stared after them. Someone had called the police about yesterday's incident. Someone who cared enough to make sure she was protected. Someone like Luca. When her shift ended, Luca was waiting outside. This time, Johnny was with him, leaning against a second car. Extra security? Eva asked as she got into Luca's BMW. Better safe than sorry. They picked up Sammy from school, and on the drive back to Luca's house, her son entertained them with stories from his day. He'd made a new friend at recess. His teacher had praised his math homework. Small, normal kid things that felt precious after months of watching him withdraw. Can we have dinner together again? Sammy asked as they pulled through the iron gates. If your mother doesn't mind, Luca said. Eva looked back at her son's hopeful face. I don't mind. That evening, they ate Mrs. Morelli's homemade pasta in Luca's dining room. The space was formal, but somehow felt warm with the three of them there. Sammy asked for seconds, then thirds, making Mrs. Morelli beam with pride. After dinner, Luca showed Sammy his study. The walls were lined with books, and there was an old chess set on a side table. Do you know how to play? Luca asked. Sammy shook his head. Would you like to learn? For the next hour, Eva watched Luca patiently teach her son the basics of chess. He didn't talk down to Sammy or get frustrated when the boy forgot which piece moved how. Instead, he praised every small success and gently corrected mistakes. When it was time for Sammy's bath and bed, Eva felt a pang of sadness. The evening had been so normal, so peaceful, like they were a family instead of strangers thrown together by circumstance. After Sammy was asleep, Eva found Luca in his study, staring at the chessboard they'd left set up. Thank you, she said from the doorway. For what? For making him feel normal, for treating him like he matters. Luca looked up at her. He does matter. You both do. Eva stepped into the room, drawn by something in his voice. You're good with him. Did you have children? Pain flashed across Luca's features. He was quiet for so long, Eva thought he wouldn't answer. A daughter, he said finally. Sophia, she would be 10 now. What happened to them, if you don't mind me asking? Luca stood and walked to the window that looked out over his garden. They were in the wrong place at the wrong time, a car bomb meant for someone else. Eva's hand flew to her mouth. Oh my God! The men who planted it were targeting a rival. My wife and daughter were just collateral damage. The pain in his voice was raw, even after 3 years. Eva's heart broke for him. I'm so sorry. I should have protected them better, should have seen it coming. It wasn't your fault. Luca turned to look at her. Wasn't it? I chose the life I live. I knew the risks. I should have kept them away from it. What kind of life? The question hung in the air between them. Eva had been avoiding asking directly, but now it felt necessary. Luca was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was careful. I run businesses that sometimes put me in conflict with dangerous people. People who don't follow the same rules as everyone else. It wasn't a complete answer, but Eva understood what he was telling her, and what he wasn't saying directly. Are you in the Mafia? The blunt question surprised them both. Luca's eyebrows rose. Would it matter if I was? Eva thought about it. 2 days ago, the answer would have been yes. Absolutely. But now, after seeing how he treated Sammy, how he protected her without asking for anything in return, I don't know, she said honestly. My family has been in certain businesses for a long time, Luca said carefully. businesses that operate in gray areas of the law, but I've never hurt innocent people. I protect my community. I take care of my employees. And I don't tolerate men who threaten women and children. Eva nodded slowly. She thought about Danny backing down so quickly when Luca appeared, about Gianni scaring off the men at the diner, about the police increasing patrols around her workplace. "Are you afraid of me?" Luca asked. Eva looked at this man who had given her and Sammy safety when they needed it most, who had made her son laugh and taught him chess and scrambled eggs at dawn. "No," she said, "I'm not afraid of you." Relief flickered across his features. "Good." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment. Outside, Eva could see lights dotting the property. Security lights, she realized, cameras and guards and all, the things that came with Luca's complicated life. "What happens next?" she asked. "With Danny, I mean." "I'm having him watched. We'll know if he tries to approach you or Sammy." "And if he does?" Luca's expression hardened. "He won't hurt you again. I promise you that." There was something in his tone that made Eva shiver. Not with fear, but with the knowledge that Luca Vitale was a man who kept his promises, no matter what it cost. The next morning, Eva woke to the sound of voices outside her window. She looked out and saw Sammy in the garden with Luca, both of them crouched beside a flower bed. She dressed quickly and went outside to find them planting what looked like herbs. "Sammy wanted to help with the basil," Luca explained. "Mrs. Morelli uses it in her cooking." "Look, Mama!" Sammy held up his dirt-covered hands proudly. "I'm a gardener." Eva's heart swelled watching her son's joy. "You're the best gardener I've ever seen." Later that morning, while Sammy was at school and Eva was at work, her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "You think you're safe, but you're not. Bring Sammy to the park on 5th Street tonight at 8 p.m. Come alone or you'll regret it." Eva's hand shook as she read the message again. Danny had found her somehow, and now he was making specific demands. She showed the text to Maria, who immediately wanted to call the police. "What if he hurts Sammy?" Eva whispered. "What if this is just the beginning?" "Then you let that boyfriend of yours handle it. Luca, right? He seems like he knows how to deal with guys like Danny." Eva realized Maria was right. Luca had resources she didn't have, experience with dangerous people, and he'd promised to protect them. She called him immediately. "I'm coming to get you," Luca said after reading the text. "Don't go anywhere alone." "He wants me to bring Sammy." "You're not bringing Sammy anywhere near that man." 20 minutes later, Luca walked into Murphy's diner with Gianni and another man Eva didn't recognize. The stranger was younger, with sharp eyes and an expensive suit. "This is Marco," Luca said. "He's going to stay here while we talk to your ex-husband." "Talk to him?" Luca's smile was cold. "Among other things." Eva felt a chill of fear, not for herself, but for Danny. Whatever Luca was planning, it wouldn't end well for her ex-husband. "Don't hurt him," she said quietly. "Please, for Sammy's sake." Luca's expression softened when he looked at her. "I won't hurt him unless I have to. But this ends tonight, Eva, one way or another." As Eva watched Luca and Gianni leave the diner, she realized she was trusting this man with more than just her safety. She was trusting him with her son's future, with the possibility of a life without fear. And for the first time in months, she believed that maybe, just maybe, they were going to be okay. That evening, while Sammy played chess with Mrs. Morelli in the living room, Eva waited by the window for Luca to return. She didn't know what he was doing or how he planned to handle Danny, but she knew that when he came back, everything would be different. For better or worse, Luca Vitale was about to become a permanent part of their lives. And despite all her fears and questions, Eva discovered she wanted him to be. Eva paced in Luca's living room, checking her phone every few minutes. He'd been gone for 3 hours, 3 hours of not knowing what was happening with Danny or if Luca was safe. "Mama, you're making me nervous," Sammy said from where he sat with Mrs. Morelli, working on a puzzle. "Sorry, baby." Eva forced herself to sit down, but her leg bounced with anxiety. Mrs. Morelli gave her a knowing look. "He'll be fine, dear. Luca knows how to handle himself. What if something goes wrong? What if Danny calls the police? What if you trust the man who's been protecting you?" Mrs. Morelli's voice was gentle but firm. "Luca doesn't make promises he can't keep." At 10:30, car lights swept across the driveway. Eva jumped up and ran to the window. Luca's BMW pulled up to the house, followed by Johnny's car. Eva met Luca at the front door. He looked tired but unharmed. No blood, no torn clothing. Whatever had happened, it hadn't involved violence. "Is it over?" she asked. "It's over." Relief flooded through her. "What did you do?" Luca glanced toward the living room where Sammy was still working on his puzzle. "Let's talk privately." They went to his study. Luca closed the door and poured himself a glass of whiskey from a crystal decanter. "Your ex-husband won't be bothering you anymore," he said. "How can you be sure?" "Because I made him an offer he couldn't refuse." Luca's smile was grim. "Danny has some debts, gambling debts to some very unpleasant people. I paid them off." Eva stared at him. "You paid Danny's debts?" "In exchange for him leaving the state and never contacting you or Sammy again. But that must have cost a fortune." Luca shrugged. "Money I won't miss." "Why would you do that? For us?" Luca set down his glass and looked at her seriously. "Because you and Sammy deserve peace, and because some problems are easier to solve with money than violence." Eva felt tears prick her eyes. "I can't let you do that. I'll pay you back somehow." "No." Luca's voice was firm. "This is my gift to you, to both of you. A chance to start over without looking over your shoulders." "Luca, I can't accept." He crossed the room and took her hands in his. "Eva, for the past 3 years I've been living like a dead man, going through the motions of life without really living. Then you walked into that restaurant and something in me woke up." Ava's breath caught. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I care about you, about Sammy. I'm saying I want you to stay here, not just until the danger passes, but permanently." Eva's heart raced. "You want us to live here?" "I want us to be a family." The words hung in the air between them. Eva searched his face, looking for any sign that he didn't mean it. "You barely know us," she whispered. "I know enough. I know you're brave and strong, and that you love your son more than anything. I know Sammy lights up when he sees me, and that makes something in my chest feel alive again. I know that when I'm with both of you, I remember what it feels like to have something worth protecting." Tears spilled down Ava's cheeks. "Luca, I'm not asking you to love me back. Not yet. I'm asking you to give us a chance, to see what we could build together." Eva thought about the past few days, how safe she'd felt in this house, how happy Sammy had been, how Luca looked at her like she was something precious instead of damaged goods. "What about your work? Your business?" "I'll be careful, more careful than I was before, and I'll make sure you and Sammy are always protected." Eva closed her eyes. When she opened them, Luca was watching her with an expression of hope and fear. "Okay," she said quietly. "Okay? Let's see what we can build together." Luca's face transformed. He pulled her into his arms, holding her tight against his chest. Eva could hear his heart beating fast beneath his shirt. "Thank you," he whispered into her hair. "Thank you for giving us a chance." When they broke apart, Eva saw moisture in Luca's dark eyes. This strong, dangerous man was crying because she'd said yes to the possibility of loving him. "We should tell Sammy," she said. "Are you sure he'll be okay with it?" Eva smiled through her tears. "I think he's been hoping for this since the day he met you." They found Sammy in the living room, now curled up on the couch with his head in Mrs. Morelli's lap. The older woman was reading to him from a book of fairy tales. "Sammy?" Eva sat down beside him. "Luca and I want to talk to you about something important." Sammy sat up, instantly alert. "Are we leaving?" "Well, that depends on you," Luca said, kneeling in front of the couch. "How would you feel about staying here? For a long time, maybe forever?" Sammy's eyes went wide. "Really? We can live here with you?" "If you want to." "What about Daddy?" Eva took a deep breath. "Daddy moved far away. He won't be coming back." Sammy considered this for a moment. "Will you be my new daddy?" he asked Luca. Eva's breath caught. She looked at Luca, wondering how he'd respond to such a big question from a 7-year-old. Luca's voice was gentle when he answered, "I'd like that very much, if it's okay with you and your mama." Sammy looked back and forth between them. "Can I call you Papa? That's what my friend Marco calls his stepdad." Luca's eyes filled with tears again. "I would love that." Sammy launched himself off the couch and into Luca's arms. Eva watched this man who'd lost his own child hold her son like he was precious beyond measure. "I love you, Papa," Sammy said simply. Luca closed his eyes and held him tighter. "I love you too, son." Mrs. Morelli wiped tears from her own eyes. "Well," she said with a shaky voice, "I suppose I should start planning a wedding." Eva laughed despite her tears. "Mrs. Morelli, we just agreed to live together. Nobody said anything about a wedding." "Yet," Luca said, looking at her with such warmth that Eva's knees went weak. "Nobody said anything about a wedding yet." 3 months later, Eva stood in the garden where she'd first seen Sammy planting herbs with Luca. Now the space was transformed with white flowers and ribbons. Chairs were arranged in neat rows, filled with the people who'd become their family. Mrs. Morelli had insisted on the garden wedding. "This is where love grew," she'd said. "It's only fitting." Eva wore a simple white dress that made her feel beautiful instead of hidden. Her hair was loose around her shoulders, the way Luca liked it. In her hands, she held a bouquet of the herbs and flowers they'd planted together. "You ready, Mama?" Sammy asked. He looked handsome in his little suit, his job as ring-bearer taken very seriously. "I'm ready, sweet boy." They walked down the aisle together. Eva had thought about asking someone else to give her away, but this felt right. She and Sammy were choosing this new life together. Luca stood at the altar, in a dark suit, his usually serious face lit up with joy. When his eyes met hers, Eva felt her heart skip. The ceremony was short and simple. They exchanged rings and vows in front of their small group of friends and family. When the pastor pronounced them husband and wife, Luca kissed her gently while Sammy cheered. "We're really a family now," Sammy announced to everyone, making the whole group laugh. Later, during the reception on the back terrace, Eva found herself watching Luca dance with Sammy to a slow song. Her son's feet stood on top of Luca's shoes as they swayed to the music. "Happy?" Johnny asked, appearing beside her with 2 glasses of champagne. "Completely," Eva said, accepting the glass. "He's different now, since you and the boy came into his life." "Different how?" "He smiles. Really smiles, not just the polite ones he used to give. And he laughs. I hadn't heard him laugh in 3 years." Eva watched her new husband spin Sammy in a circle, both of them grinning. "He's given us so much. A home, safety, love. I just hope I can give him enough in return." "You already have," Gianni said. "You gave him a reason to live again." As the evening wound down, Eva and Luca stood together on the terrace watching their guests leave. Sammy had fallen asleep on a chair nearby, exhausted from all the excitement. "No regrets?" Luca asked, wrapping his arms around her from behind. Eva leaned back against his chest. "None. You?" "Only that I waited 34 years to find you." "Well, I'm here now. We both are." Luca kissed the top of her head. "What are you thinking about?" Eva smiled, remembering the night they'd met. How broken she'd felt, how convinced she was that Danny was right about her being unwanted. "I'm thinking about second chances," she said, "and how sometimes the worst nights of your life can lead to the best ones." "That sounds like wisdom." "It sounds like love." Luca turned her in his arms so she was facing him. In the soft light from the house, she could see the man who'd rescued her from a parking lot and ended up rescuing her from everything else too. "I love you, Eva Vitale," he said, and her new name sounded perfect in his voice. "I love you too." As they kissed under the stars, with their son sleeping peacefully nearby and their future stretching bright ahead of them, Eva knew she'd finally found where she belonged. She'd found home. Epilogue. 1 year later. Eva woke up to the sound of laughter from the kitchen. She smiled and stretched, then padded downstairs in her robe to find Luca teaching Sammy how to make pancakes. "Morning, beautiful," Luca said, kissing her cheek as she poured coffee. "Morning, Mama," Sammy called from his step stool at the stove. "I'm making breakfast." "I can see that. You're getting very good at flipping pancakes." Sammy beamed with pride. At 8, he was confident and talkative, nothing like the quiet, frightened boy she'd brought to this house over a year ago. "I have news," Eva said, settling onto a stool at the kitchen island. "Good news, I hope," Luca said, joining her with his own coffee. Eva smiled and placed her hand on her still flat stomach. The best news. It took Luca a moment to understand. When he did, his face went through a series of expressions: surprise, joy, fear, then overwhelming happiness. "Really?" he whispered. "Really. I found out yesterday." Luca set down his coffee and pulled her into his arms, spinning her around the kitchen while she laughed. "What's happening?" Sammy asked, abandoning his pancakes. "You're going to be a big brother," Eva told him. Sammy's mouth fell open. "A baby? A real baby?" "A real baby," Luca confirmed, his voice thick with emotion. Sammy whooped and threw his arms around both of them. "This is the best family ever." As Eva stood in the kitchen, surrounded by her husband and son, she thought about how far they'd all come. Luca had learned to love again. Sammy had found his voice and a father who treasured him. And Eva had discovered that sometimes the most broken people could build the strongest families. Outside the window, the garden was in full bloom. The herbs they'd planted together that first week had grown into something beautiful and lasting, just like their love. "I love you," she whispered to Luca. "Forever," he whispered back. And Eva knew he meant it. In this house, with this man, she'd finally found the life she'd stopped believing was possible. A life where she was cherished instead of criticized, protected instead of threatened, loved instead of tolerated. Danny had been wrong about everything. Eva Mancini, now Eva Vitale, was very much wanted indeed. She was home.